Hello folks and welcome to episode 2 of season 2 of the Life Behind the Trig podcast. We are back with myself, Kyle Randalls from Glorious Falkirk, and sitting next to me once again is Sinclair Patience, who is the Pain from 10.
Glorious 10, yeah.
The Pain from 10. Who started that?
I think it was Pete Hart.
Pete Hart.
Pete's a bit of a character if anyone's never met him. Originally from New Zealand.
Kiwi.
Pete, actually, we talked last episode about a lot of young up-and-comers. Pete's got a really good training group of young throwers, including his sons, from age like 14 up to
18, 19?
18, 19, yeah. He's probably got about 8 to 10 young throwers who train quite frequently, so aye, that's Pete.
I'd probably say as well, touching on the Pete thing, there's probably COVID again probably knocked a bit, and I would say due to Pete's sort of interactions, I would say that he's probably almost created like a league of throwers that are solely from his local area and kids that he's coached.
Pretty much.
So it's good to see, and I think that's like a nod to the hat that he probably deserves.
Yeah, definitely. But aye, Pete started the Pain from 10.
I think I've called you that a few times. But yeah, today's introduction is basically going to be a dissection and a look back at the Webster's Worlds this year that both Sinclair and I went to. Called Webster's Worlds, obviously due to David Webster sort of founding it and being one of the core members. You're getting like an organised World Championships that sort of vacates around the world. It goes round to different areas. David Webster sadly passed this year. I was lucky enough to meet him twice, albeit both pretty briefly. Once when I was 15, it was a demonstration I went to with Willie Robertson. He explained who he was to me, but when you're young at that age, you don't fully take it in. And then the second time I met him, I think I was 16 or 17. I'd done a few more Highland games and I sort of understood the gravitas of the man. I know you'd met him quite a few times.
Yeah, I knew David pretty well. I've probably gone to Worlds about 5 times in different countries. And on a number of times had breakfast with David when I was overseas. But no, he was a good guy. He obviously he's done a huge amount for not just Highland Games but strength sports throughout the world. He was heavily involved with strongman. He's also brought a bit of a resurgence in natural stone lifting, which is really popular in Scotland at the moment. So definitely a sad loss, but I suppose his legacy will go on in the Webster World Championships, which is great for the games and great for us. So we were over in Fergus this year in Canada. It's actually one of my favourite games. Fergus I'd been over in 2015 and they hosted the Webster Worlds this year. So it was your first time over, Kyle.
Yeah, it was. I was invited the COVID years, and I was looking forward to going. I think it was Fergus as well, or was it? It was Canada anyway, and I was all looking forward to it. I was organising my holidays, and I believe it was my wife Amy. She said I maybe wouldn't book anything now because COVID was just rearing its head, and I'm glad I didn't. But loads of people had said to me, honestly, you're going to go regardless of the result. You're going to enjoy yourself. It's a great games. You're well looked after. It's a nice part of the world. And everyone said to me there's not much to do around there. It's just like a flat plateau of farms, but it's kind of beautiful, and it was like reminiscent of home a wee bit, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's why I liked it. Like when I first came back, that 2015, people were asking about it, and I said it's more Scottish than Scotland.
Oh, aye.
There's mass pipe bands. Warren Trask, a bit of a shout out to Warren Trask. He runs the games. His son Jamie throws. Warren's brilliant. He's very fixed in some things, which he's quite a firm character, but a great guy. And it was great to see his son Jamie overthrowing in Braemar this year as well. So yeah, again, well done to Warren for hosting Worlds and running a good games every year. Another shout out on that note to Lynn Boland Richardson.
Yeah.
We'll come on to it, but Lynn's from around that area. She's previously been heavily involved in the Fergus Highland Games. Good friends with Bruce Aitken and the Aitken family. But Lynn was very kind to both Kyle and I and gave us a bit of like a
goodie bag.
A wee goodie bag when we arrived, full of lots of Canadian sweets and treats. So that was great.
Listen, I'm pretty sure if you'd cut me open on either day of the games, I'd have been bleeding maple syrup and just Timmy's, as they call it over there, Tim Hortons.
Yeah.
That's what I was living on. And I brought some of the sweets home, and Amy and I basically finished them off. But yeah, The other one I'd like to thank is Christoph Wand. Very interesting character. I've got to say, him and Warren, they're both kind of no bullshit, have a laugh, but like get the job done, serious guys, and both I would say were harsh but fair, which is how I like my judges. I'm a big fan of everyone being treated the same. That's very much what happened.
Yeah.
I just, again, it was it sort of pre-warned me, like with the Trig and whatnot, and the lines, and you know, there's wee things. Obviously, out my first time out at Worlds, things are done slightly differently. It was just an adjusting process, but I really really enjoyed it, and those guys made it what it was. So yeah,
absolutely. I think Christoph's a great guy as well, and has also been involved for a number of years. He was a good thrower himself.
Yeah,
Christoph, as was Warren. But yeah, they hosted a great games, and we were both fortunate to go. How did you get invited?
So yeah, this is one of the things I was going to touch on, like the invite process. Again, I'm not involved in the makeup of this, so I can't comment from an inside perspective. I'm just on the outside being invited. But my understanding is, in terms of Scottish thrower, I believe they look at like the big games in Scotland, they look at the results for the year, and they sort of look at who's been regularly turning up, who's throwing well, who's sort of rocking up and saying, here I am. So it was Sinclair and myself that were invited this year. And I think I got the invite. The first sort of mention was around March or April, I think. February, March, April. I know it was quite early in the year. So I sort of priced it up. I looked what it was. And unfortunately, Scotland to Canada isn't the cheapest flight in the world. And there was limited availability. So I was looking at it. And one of my aims for this season was to do well in the Glenfiddich. One of the things that I believe years ago, Alistair Gunn, Bruce Aitken, etc., when they used to go, is they would compete at Ballater games on the Thursday, fly out either the Thursday night or the Friday, and then compete the Saturday and Sunday. So naively, I thought, oh, I'll do that. And it wasn't until they sort of confirmed the dates and we realised what was happening that we were actually competing on the Friday night. So my plans went out the window, and I ended up having to pay and change my flight a couple of weeks, if not a couple of months before I went.
Yeah,
but I was humming and hawing, and I know I'd spoke to you quite a bit about, what should I do? Or I sort of seek counsel, shall we say.
Yeah. I think everyone was trying to be kind and saying that don't be stupid. Go earlier than Thursday night, especially for a World Championship. But I think you made the right decision in changing your flight and coming over on the Thursday, especially given that we were kicking off and throwing on the Friday, which is something a bit different for us again. But we'll talk about that shortly. It was actually quite cool to do.
Yeah.
The Friday night lead in, but you flew first class, and you convinced me to do the same.
Well, I think a good bit of the old peer pressure kicked in, and a bit of the FOMO. So I decided, like, it was only about £100 to upgrade, and Jamie Gunn had been over it a few times to Fergus, and he sort of gave me the do not fly in a normal seat
economy.
So when I got on the plane, it's only the second time in my life I've walked on a plane and then I'm sitting right at the front. Yeah. So turbulence is worse, but the comfort's up there.
It was brilliant.
And you genuinely just had like a sort of like a console table that you were sitting in. I mean, it was definitely worth the money. I arrived and I didn't feel like I'd been in a tuna can or something.
No, I was the same. It was the first time I'd flown first class, and you kind of got a recliner seat and service right through the flight, and it wasn't too long. It was about 7 hours to get there, but it's long enough to come off that kind of flight and feel horrendous. So I think it was the right decision to upgrade. So I got into Fergus on the Wednesday. I think it was just me and Glenn Niss who were there on the Wednesday, and then Kyle, you arrived along with Vlad, was it?
We were on the same flight
on the Thursday. It was. I have never seen a man look rougher than Vladislav when he got off that flight.
What was it? Was it Glenn that said he had eyes like a chipmunk or something? Who said that? He could barely open his eyes.
They look like piss holes in the snow.
He was definitely tired. So I remember we got to the hotel and you and Glenn were sitting, and I came straight down. I think we got food.
Yeah.
And Vlad disappeared to his bed for I don't even know how long. I don't know if we even saw him again that day.
I don't think we did.
But I, like touching on the flight, the first class thing, we were right. I was literally the first seat, and they came round with like snacks, and there was like a tray, and this woman said, "Do you want anything?" And I was like, "Oh," I assumed I was going to have to buy it, so I took like a Kit Kat, and then the guy next to me took like a Kit Kat. There was like some like Canadian chocolate bar. He took a packet of M&Ms. I didn't realise you could take everything, yeah. So I was like, "Excuse me," I ended up taking at least one of everything, and that was me settled in. But yeah, honestly, I'd agree. The flight was great, really comfortable. And then obviously arriving at the hotel, it's always good seeing a familiar face, and I know you guys had already got the lay of the land, scoped it out, and we realised that the food in the hotel was actually pretty good.
It was really good, yeah. I mean, we didn't have too much hanging about, which is good in a way. It's nice to see the place, but at the same time, when you're over for a competition, you don't want to do too much before. So we didn't do a huge amount. We just kind of hang about the hotel, to be honest. We met some good guys. I mean, we knew that Lorne Coulthard from Scotland was going to be competing, so Lorne arrived on the Thursday as well, along with his good mate Jason Baines, and Jason's a real character. But we went out for a meal with those guys on the Thursday night, along with Glenn and Alex McCara from.
I think you're skipping one of the biggest things here.
What's that?
That obviously Lorne sort of grew up from the both of us. He's sort of between us in age, isn't he?
Yeah, right in the middle.
And one of the first things is when we got to the hotel, Lorne was en route and we knew it. And Sinclair phoned Lorne. Now Lorne's from like Perthshire. He's got a very staunch Scottish accent.
I'm around in a boot now.
Sinclair phoned him, and out the blue, he was just chatting away, and I was just sort of sitting in the background, and all I heard was Lorne say, "I'll be at the hotel in a boot now." And I remember you hanging up almost after it, and I almost couldn't believe what I just heard, how his accent had sort of morphed and changed. And I know we still randomly sort of quote it to each other every now and again, but it genuinely cracked me up, and it was one of the first things I said to him when I saw him. But Jason, hell of a character.
Yeah, he was a good guy.
A good time guy. Let's have some fun. Definitely fueled a lot of the...
Great thrower as well. I mean, Jason, I think, did he say he's 44? Sorry if I'm wrong, Jason.
21 in my eyes.
I doubt you'll be listening, but yeah, a great thrower. Like, what really impressed me was his hammers. We'll get on to the event shortly, but anyway, we caught up with Lorne and Jason and Alex McCara and his dad.
Good lads.
Yeah, really good guys. Joined us for a meal and a beer or two on the Thursday night. Alex actually played a lot of rugby previously, so he's still relatively...
A prop, right?
Yeah, big guy. But still relatively new to throwing, but he's a solid thrower. So it was good to meet those guys, go out for something to eat on the Thursday night. And then the Friday was a weird day because a lot of the American throwers arrived on the Friday, but it felt like a really long day because we knew that we had to be at the field for about 6 o'clock that night, or we started throwing at 6, so we kind of needed to be at the field late afternoon. So
was it 4 were to be there? They said, right?
It was late afternoon anyway, but it felt like we were just hanging about all day.
Yeah, in the hotel, you were almost climbing the walls, weren't you? You were just like, obviously in Scotland I'd say the earliest we start throwing is probably Braemar, like 10, 11.
Yeah.
Maybe Oban. You start early. Most of our games, I'd say you start 12 to sort of 1.
Yeah.
That's your normal time. So
lunchtime. We
had to wait like an extra few hours, and the time we'd normally be finishing the games, we were just starting. And it was weird as well trying to get yourself going on a Friday night for 2 events.
Yeah, it was strange. It was a strange one. So, yeah, looking for stuff to do during the day, and being a man that's got a full head of hair here, I went and got a high and shite, nice high and shite haircut. It
was a pretty cool experience, Because
it was.
In North America, you have like proper barbers. Like we walked into the place, I think everybody ended up getting a haircut to except myself for obvious reasons. But it was like the guys were shit talking. They were talking about sport. Was it not like Italian football team? Pictures up or something.
It was a Canadian Italian barber shop. But yeah, it was good. It was good. We just went and got a haircut and then relaxed at the hotel for a few hours before getting the... Well, we didn't get a shuttle actually. We got to the field with Lorne and Jason, so that was good. One thing that, like, I know it sounds pretty naive and very like chuchtery, but the size of the trucks in Canada, like every single truck was massive. You see it in America, but not to that extent. Like, every single vehicle was huge.
I'd heard when you're in Canada and it's sort of winter time, if your neighbour's in trouble, whether you like them or not, everyone just kind of mucks in. And I know that's one of the reasons the trucks are so large, is because they have the extremities of the weather sort of all over. I think it's also important to mention that when you guys were all getting your hair cut, Glenn and myself, we went for a milkshake because we've probably got the 2 best bodies in the games. We look after ourselves, really trim, both of us. So we went and got a nice like fruit milkshake just to keep ourselves fueled and at optimum performance.
I'm not going to comment.
But yeah, we got to the games and we were in Lorne's car listening to our Scottish music in the way there, getting sort of fired up. And I remember arriving, I think it was about 4 o'clock or something along that. And we went to the field and we sort of got through our passes and whatnot. we walked into the field, and I remember sort of just taking measure of it, and I thought, is this where we're from? Like, it was just a couple of like, what's the word, bleachers?
Yeah.
And I couldn't really see it. And I remember being blown away when the cage sort of got lifted in, and I thought, what the hell's going on? How can they lift the cage?
Yeah.
And obviously in later events we'll talk about that, but the cage just got moved around, and then the tape, everything just appeared from nowhere. It was just exceptionally well run.
You couldn't, initially you couldn't determine where we were going to throw from. And for night one, we ended up throwing on front of the stage where the bands would play the next day. So the first event up was the Braemar Stone, and that's obviously something that we don't do too often in Scotland, probably only 2 or 3 times a year, to be honest. So it's quite a strong event for the Americans and the Canadians, because they sort of do it week in, week out. But I think it was a big heavy stone.
26 pounds, something along.
26 or 27 pound Braemar stone. Relatively awkward. Everyone was trying to find a handle on the stone in warm-ups, and it felt okay. I found a bit that felt quite nice, but Warren got us together just prior to the event starting, and he said that you could lift your left foot. If you're a right-handed thrower, you could lift your left foot, but it had to land again in the same position which it had lifted from. So in other words, you weren't allowed to travel at all, like a mini glide essentially. And for some reason, like, that got in my head a little bit.
Oh, you and I both.
Well, yeah, but your outcome was better than mine. Like, I've never fouled a standing putt, and of course just flown to Canada for a World Championship, and I fouled my first throw, so straight away put myself under a bit of pressure there. But you're a glider as well, Kyle, so you had a strong performance there.
Well, I see with the Braemar, I've got some ugly stones. So Willie that used to coach me, Willie Robertson, he got me into the games, and he was a stonemason, so he cut a whole load of weird stones.
Yeah.
And when he sadly passed, his wife said, just come up to the house. So I've got all these horrible stones that I take out like once a month, and I'll just throw them.
Yeah.
So when I picked this up, I thought, oh, this is fine. And honestly, we have jokes in Scotland, like Craig Winslow's the sort of dildo champ carry. Like, if there's an event that involves carrying something, he's going to win it. And he always jokes that if there's a big ugly stone, then I'll win it. Just, you give me a shot putt, I'll struggle away, and I feel like my hand's engulfing it. But see a stone that I can't hold properly, I'm your man. But I do remember I did an easy one to get one in, because that's sort of how I throw. So I did an easy one. I was maybe like middle of the pack, and then my second one I was like, here we go, boys.
Yeah.
And I remember I lifted my foot, and obviously I got the first foul, and luckily it was my second one. I had one in, and I thought, oh no, third one I need to kind of make it up.
Yeah.
And sadly my foul was over 40 foot, which everyone said, 37, 38 foot's good with that, and I thought 40. And I think my third one, I can't remember the exact distance, but I managed to catch one. I was like 39 and change, so I think that was good enough for second. And then you had the disheartening thing of watching John Van Buren just smash things down the range as if it was the easiest thing in the world, which is a reoccurring theme throughout this trip, really, isn't it?
Yeah, John absolutely hammered the stone. For everyone else, like, it was quite close, really.
Yeah.
I think from like probably third down the way, there wasn't much in it. A couple of foot maximum. So yeah, it was good to get things going on the Friday night. Like we said, quite an awkward stone, and I think that was a bit of a leveler for people.
Yeah.
First event, and then we went into my worst nightmare, which was the qualifying caber. And if anyone knows me, it's definitely not a strength.
Weren't you British caber champion?
I was. To be fair, like, I actually tossed quite a few cabers this season, but I was in my head with that one, as I was for the whole games, which I'll talk about soon. But yeah, I was in my head, and I was one of, I think, 4 out of 12 not to toss the qualifying caber. I put it at quarter past, like it went up and fell to the side.
You were frustratingly close, I remember.
It was really close, and everyone
was it not twice as well?
Everyone kept saying to me, stop running up the hill, and I could not work out how I was running up a hill. Like, I couldn't see the hill, so I don't know if I need glasses. But yeah, at the end of the day, I didn't toss the caber, which then meant I took joint last in that event, which is a bit of a sickener on evening one of a world championship. So from then it was just trying to hold things together for me, to be honest. Which again, there were no disasters really apart from that. But yeah, tough start. Whereas I think you,
my quality caber, I think my first one, again, the caber sometimes gets in my head and I feel like I overcomplicate it. My first one I picked up and I was like, oh, there's not much weight to this, but I remember it being quite long.
Yeah,
it was sort of Inverarity-esque.
Kind of, it's quite a wobbly caber.
Aye.
Yeah.
And I remember running with it and I pulled it and I was like 85 degrees and I thought, oh, maybe this is going. My second one, I got it over and it was quite a poor toss. And then my third one, I thought, oh, that's much better. That's sort of, top half. But I think I finished, was it 7th or 8th? I can't remember.
Yeah.
But the weird thing, and again, I've never had this in Scotland, is the judges said that if you don't toss this will be your placing for the overall caber. Yeah. So I think I was either last or second last in terms of the placings that tossed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never experienced like if you don't get it over, you're just equal. Which again, I had to get my head around that. But it was a weird one because you went back to the hotel and like you were like, oh, we've done 2 out of like 8 events. Like how do I get going for this?
Yeah.
And then obviously there was no sheaf because it's the Devil's event, so that was always that was a big plus.
So yeah, two events down. You were already sitting probably mid-pack by that
I would
stage.
say the Braemar probably helped me. I think I was 4th or 5th.
Yeah. 4th or 5th overall, yeah. Whereas I think I was probably sitting 7th or 8th at that stage, maybe even lower with the caber. But yeah, it was good to get the Friday night out of the way. To be honest, I actually felt a bit of pressure off then.
Yeah.
Because it was kind of like, well, that's probably my worst event. It can be hit or miss, but what had happened, and I just had to kind of move on from that. So we went back. I think we just stayed with Lauren and Jason. We went and got a burrito.
Oh, that was good.
Yeah, burrito. We opted for burritos.
Yeah.
They opted for the healthier option of a burrito bowl.
They had regrets.
They had serious regrets. We definitely had the best meal that evening.
We were carved up, sitting ready to go. And did they not talk about going and getting something else as well?
Yeah, I think they almost had to go and get a second round of dinner. But no, we were good. We ate and tried to get a relatively early night, I think. But
we had one drink, didn't we? And then we were off to bed.
Just a single beer and then off to bed. But it's I find it difficult to sleep that night. I think just your adrenaline's going. You know that you've got 6 events still coming up the next day. You're still probably a bit kind of jet lagged, or I don't know what you call it, going that way. But you're feeling it a wee bit from the travel. And I was waking up every day about sort of 4 a.m, which is about right, because there's a bit of a time difference. So. I struggled to sleep too much on the Friday night. What you slept all right, did you?
Yeah, I mean the hotel was it a Marriott or a Hilton? I get confused.
Can't remember.
But the hotel had set the games had set us up well in like a good hotel, and I just remember every room had 2 beds. Did you sleep in the bed closest to the door? Did you opt in for the far away?
Closest to the door so I could self-defend myself.
That's exactly what I thought. I looked at the angles of approach and I thought, right, this is the best place. But I remember, I think I came and got you and we went down. We didn't get breakfast. We got it en route to the games, didn't we, on Saturday? Yeah. Because I remember I actually slept surprisingly well. The first thing I heard was, I think we got back quite early. We went to bed. It wasn't too late.
No.
And I fell asleep pretty quick, which really rare for me. I normally get in my own head. And I remember waking up and the first thing I heard was my alarm. Performed my morning absolutions or ablutions, whatever they call it. I think I messaged you. You were already up, Matt. I think I went to your door and you were sitting with Skipinnish on, getting yourself ready, get the Scottish tunes on. You were packing the bag, and we basically did we not jump in Lorne's motor? And we headed to the games quite early, right?
Yeah, we got there early. I think stopped in on the way to get something to eat.
I got a Timmy's.
Did you?
I got a Timmy's. I was shocked how cheap it was because I got like a French vanilla latte because I'm a man of culture and taste. And then I got like 2 of their breakfast sort of, not burgers, but I guess buns or biscuits, whatever they call it. And that was tremendous. That just set me up for the day. And I remember arriving at the games and I just thought, here we go. Like I was just ready for it. But yeah, the games itself, like we had our own tent, like our segregated area that we were just sitting in. And we sort of ended up sitting in like Base Camp Europe. like everyone that throws in Scotland or in Europe were on like one corner, and then the Scots were even more segregated within that, sitting in a wee corner. And then Lauren and Jason sort of joined in with a gang. And
you don't purposely do that. I think it's just we arrived in the same car, and you tend to just sit with guys that you've travelled with. But yeah, it did feel a bit like that.
But we arrived, and then the thing that really sort of caught me was we had like free physiotherapy.
Yeah.
So I'd been really struggling with like an adductor / quad
don't
injury.
Do it, Kyle. Don't do it. I remember trying to talk you out of it.
I'd had a pretty bad niggle, and it was just tight. And whenever I glide, or it was the 28, that's when it felt funky. And Sinky was like, he was on my shoulders, the demon, like the devil saying, "Don't do it, Kyle." And I'd been getting physio sort of for a few weeks about it. And I thought,
too late. It's too late.
I thought, I'm going to do it. I've survived the Friday. And I remember the woman saying, like, I can quickly, like, sort of warm this up and you'll be sound, but it'll probably be sore tomorrow and it'll bruise. And I just, I was like, just do it. So I was sitting there, like, grimacing, and I was on the bed for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And I remember jumping up after it. Obviously, I didn't, because I'm 30 years old now, but I got up and I thought, oh, this is very warm and I can't feel it. And within about, I think it was 3 or 4 hours, by the time we'd finished for the day, it was bruised to hell, but I'd made it through it. But yeah, even that, like, it was a nice little positive. I don't know if you got any treatment. I know a lot of the boys did.
No, I'm always sceptical of on-field treatment. I'm a bit nervous if I've got anything. Like, I think, all right, a few days before, the week before, but with something on the day, especially at a World Championship, I'd be a bit nervous to go in and have anything touched. But Kyle just touched me for anyone. But yeah, good you got that done, and it worked, obviously.
So I felt alright. Yeah.
So yeah, I think first event up on the Saturday was open stone.
It's like the heavy open stone, right?
Yeah. So the Braemar, which they used on the Friday night, that's normally the open stone at Fergus, but because it's so heavy, they decided to use that as the Braemar, and then the next day. They seem to have a range of implements.
It's pretty cool to see,
ready to go at any time. But there was a stone there, relatively nice stone. I think it was about £17. So open stone was the first event up, and again, I this is a story of my World Championship this year, but nothing special, nothing horrendous. First 2 throws were horrendous. Managed to get one out at, I don't know, high 47s on my last throw, which again in any games this year I'd be really disappointed with. Yeah. But I think given the circumstances, being over there already under pressure, for some reason I felt really tight in the box, and looking back on the whole games, I kind of felt like I was at 75%, which was really frustrating, but it happens, and as I said, I've been to 5 World Championships now. It happens, and you've just to kind of move on from it. But there were no absolute disasters. So, yeah, I was like high 47s in the end. I think two bad throws, and then I managed to
caught one.
Kind of catch one on the final throw. Would have liked to go over 50, but didn't happen. If I had, it wouldn't have made much difference, to be honest, in the overall standings. So, yeah, not a disaster. By no means my best either.
See, I would say the open stone there's some very good stone putters there. Like, it's the Worlds, there's going to be good people in every event.
Yeah.
And I would say that 50 was like a 52 or a 53 normally.
Yeah.
Like, there was people struggling to really catch it. It was quite a long stone, if I remember.
It's an odd shape.
And I think my first throw, I think I was 49 and change, and I thought, oh, this is alright today. Mm-hmm. And it took until my third throw, I believe, to actually get over 50, and it was only just.
Yeah.
So I was pretty consistent with my 3 putts. But I think I can't remember where I was there. I think I was 4th or 5th, which again wasn't a great throw for me. I didn't catch any. I thought that'll do, and that's both the putts out of the way, which I would say are probably my weaker events, bar maybe the caber, or traditionally the weaker events. Mm-hmm. And I remember it's funny for us because in Scotland you throw the light implement and then the heavy, and obviously at Worlds it was inverted the other way around, which I think is the norm in North America. And after the open stone, we're both probably sitting okay, probably wanting more from our throws, but we went into the heavy hammer, and that's when I remember my mind was blown, they just lifted the cage like this team of people, like this cage,
Yeah.
and they moved it around, and it came in like a bed sheet off of a washing line just onto the field.
Yeah.
And they just pegged it in place. They put the Trig in, and I remember being blown away, like, holy shit, this is where we're throwing.
And it was like, that's kind of tribute to the games, because they had, like, at any time there were so many volunteers there.
Yeah, and they're all throwers, so they know what they're doing.
They knew what they were doing, and like, it wasn't. You think of a movable cage as something that's not that robust, but it was. It was a really good cage. So, but yeah, it's quite impressive. They were just moving it about. So yeah, well, onto heavy hammer then.
Yeah, like again, we got sort of pulled aside. The judges, the two big lads, they pulled us aside. They said, right, a lot of you have thrown here before, some of you haven't. Probably looking at me and you. Lorne had also warned me about the hammer. He said, be careful with your feet. So what happens a lot of the time in Scotland is the first round you'll be sound right behind the Trig. The second round you're normally okay. The third round the ground will be ruined. So a lot of the time on the third throw I'll just go out to the right hand side slightly, still behind the Trig largely, but I am out a little bit.
Yeah.
And I just throw in like my own wee corner where nobody sort of digs in.
Yeah.
But over there I pretty much got warned I couldn't do that. So I thought in my head, my first throw, I was dead in the middle of the Trig. I thought, right, get like a 90% throw in, just get a mark. So I went round, I think I was like 115, maybe 116. I remember someone went, oh, that's a big one. And again, when you're throwing, sometimes you can't tell. And I went down and I just heard the foul. And I thought, no, not in the heavy hammer, one of my favourite events, no.
Yeah.
And I looked and I was just said, oh, what was it? And my heel was like slightly out from behind the Trig, which over there, under their rules on the day, was a foul. So I just kind of took it in the chin. And then my second one, I was like, oh, fuck. I remember going in and I was sort of like, in my head, you know, I was like shaking. I was like vibrating. I was like, oh no. I put out like I'd say a rangefinder. I think it was 116 or something. 117 I think it was. So I think I was inches behind Damien. And again, he was just going through the motions, looked smooth as butter, popped it out there. And I can remember my third one, I went, Kyle, everything you know about the heavy hammer technique, chuck it in the bin.
Yeah.
Put this round yourself 3 times and just sling it down.
Is that not what you always try and do with the hammer?
Pretty much, yeah. But I just remember trying to. It was timing was all I was thinking about. I think I was just shy of 1, 2, 3,
Big
which
throw.
I think is my second or furthest throw ever. So I was obviously happy with it, but frustratingly there was more there. Like I didn't. You know, the stars didn't align. My hammer had been clicking all year, especially on the heavy, and I thought, here we go. I did take one extra one. I think I was like 1, 2, 1 or something. So again, didn't catch it. Frustrating for me. And I can just remember one of the first hammers I looked at somebody throwing was your one, and I remember thinking, bloody hell, I think he's caught that a bit.
Yeah, my hammers felt okay actually in Fergus. They are nice hammers.
Yeah, lead ball,
nice
good
hammers.
shaft.
We don't often throw lead hammers
Or PVC.
Yeah, true. No, true PVC as well. So it makes it quite whippy. I had 2 okay throws. Like going on my season, they're probably up there with some of my better throws this season. I can't remember exact distances because I was kind of chasing it the whole weekend. But I think I was 105 with a heavy, which again is not. I've thrown a lot further, but going on what I was throwing the hammer this season, that wasn't too bad. But yeah, that to see that 1, 2, 3, like that's a huge throw with a heavy hammer. I think I've seen Dan McKim throw similar distances to that. I never really saw Bruce Aitken throw the heavy hammer. I don't know, was it prior to me sort of being around that he had his big throws with the heavy, but yeah, that was very impressive. I think yourself and Dan McKim are the 2 that I've seen do that kind of number with the heavy hammer. And then onto the light, it was funny because your light, like, it didn't look like it was going much faster than the heavy. But I think that's just how fast the heavy was going, to be honest. But what I noticed with your light was, and I don't know if it was just the angle I was sitting at or the field or what, but it looked like it went a lot higher than I'd seen you throw before. Because often when you with your light hammer, it kind of looks like you hook it down the way, whereas this, it just flew.
I just remember going with the light, my nerves had sort of subsided with obviously the shenanigans with the heavy. So I remember I got in with my first one, and as was my story a lot this season, my first throw in the light hammer specifically was my best one. So I went in, didn't think much, just thought about my usual timing of 1, 2, 3. and I just kind of lifted it as you said, and I didn't feel particularly great, and I remember it going down, and it was like just shy of 149 or whatever it was. And then I just remember my second and third throw, all I was doing was trying too hard and chasing it, and I think I was like 149, and I think I was like 141, 143 or something. I couldn't catch it again. And as soon as I threw that first one, and I was in with my second, before I'd even thrown, all I could think was I've peaked in this hammer already. I don't know. It just felt like I was gone.
Yeah, no, like I said, it just looked like it absolutely flew on the first one, and for some reason it looked a lot higher than I'd ever seen you throw before, and it did go pretty far. So it's a big throw, and I think whenever you see big hammer throws, it's always the case. Like something just looks different.
Yeah.
With a big hammer throw, other guys were throwing the hammers well. Like Lauren wasn't bad with the hammers either. He's always been a good hammer thrower, as we said in a previous podcast. Damien Fisher, very good with both hammers as well. So that was quite impressive to watch. But a guy that really impressed me with both the light and the heavy hammers was our man Jason. Yeah. Like Jason, I think is a Masters thrower as well. I'm not sure he does a huge number of Masters events, but he said he's over 40 anyway, isn't he? And on the smaller side.
Yeah, he's not massive, is he?
No, he'd be under 6 foot, but he was his hammers were impressive to watch. Like great technician, really
was he
good
not
speed
125, 130?
I think he was, yeah. Like I think he was. Like I was kind of battling a bit with Jason and the hammers, but it was impressive to watch his hammers. So, it was a good competition in the hammers. Like obviously you were leading from the front quite easily, to be honest. But under that again, there was some really good competition going on. So 2 good events.
I think it's also. I mean, it seems insane saying this, but like John Van Buren, like he's just a monster. Like watching him throws wild, and it feels crazy even saying this, but I think the only events he's even slightly weak in is the hammers. And when I'm saying he's weak, he's still like in the 110s with the heavy, and he's like 120s, 130s with the light, which is not weak. Yeah. It's just compared to literally like world leads and the rest of them, it's not quite there.
Yeah, it's weak,
which is insane.
Weak compared to the world leads.
Yeah,
which
are his.
Any other games, he's probably winning. So yeah, he's a good all round thrower, isn't he?
Yeah. So I have to say, like I was happy with my hammers, but I'd heard so much about the Fergus hammers. I think in the back of my mind I was like 150. So I was disappointed not to get it. The one thing I do remember is the sort of strided out the tape where the spectators were sitting. I think it was like 155.
Yeah.
And in my head I didn't think I was going to throw that, but I thought the hammer can bounce, and I remember kind of saying that under my breath, like, "Oh, is this how far is it?" And I was kind of nervous. But again, to highlight the games, the committee, the organisers, the judges, I remember in every round they moved the trig, and I was like, how can they move the trig? But they measured every throw. And again, you just had the squad come in, like just walk in, lift the cage, take the pins out. They moved it like 10 feet to the side. It was sort of had the same orientation in terms of angle, and they just put it back in. And I remember being like dumbfounded, but I was like, whoa. Yeah,
it was different. The other thing that's always different about throwing abroad is your tacky.
Yeah.
Like for us, it's usually pretty cold. Like on a good day, we'll get 23, 24 degrees, but that's the maximum. Most of the time, it's 15. So the tacky reacts differently.
Yeah.
And for me, it was taking much longer to actually become tacky.
Yeah.
It was quite slidey for a good couple of minutes. You had to really work it in. And with it being PVC as well.
I just say, I remember my tacky wasn't sort of the relationship between the shaft and the tacky wasn't how I wanted it. So I think I ended up just sort of jacking my tacky, and I ended up using like Lauren.
You can't say jacking and shaft.
I'm putting my flag in here and I'm saying it. I ended up just using like Lauren and Jason's tacky, I remember.
Yeah.
Because I just the new stuff, which is about £300 a bottle, just wasn't.
As long as you weren't jacking their shafts, then you're all right.
Not at the games anyway. But the hammers got out of the way, and I had like a bit of a high, and I can remember I took extra cracks in the hammers to try and make marks, and it probably didn't help that Steve Conway and Bill Crawford were like, "Oh, that you should go for the sort of championship records."
Yeah.
And I ended up taking extra ones, and the wee boy in me was like, "Have another." And
yeah.
Then I was like, "No, we've got a long day. We're only halfway through." So luckily, my sense kicked in, and I just took the one extra.
Yeah.
And I remember I went in the next one, In terms of events, it was the old heavyweight, and I thought Sinclair Patience will be setting him up here. This is his. He'll have the makeup on his quad. He'll be good to go.
I've already explained this was not my games. So I fouled 2 out of 3 throws, which again, man, like the one place you don't want to do that is at a world championship. I managed to get a throw in at 39, which again is not a disaster, but especially after 2 fouls, because that really puts the pressure on yourself. So yeah, story of the weekend for me. But yeah, 39, I placed me mid-pack. You went over 40.
You have to remember though, right? Like, it would have been very easy for you to go and foul 3 times.
Well, that's what I was so scared of doing. So that third throw,
forced character building.
yeah, I mean, I just was really careful. I don't know what it was. Like, it was 2 backline fouls I had, and it wasn't like, I know we make a joke that my right foot creeps out on the backswing. It wasn't on the backswing. It was after my first turn. My foot was landing over the back line, which is unusual. Like, I think my second throw was probably 42 foot. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I didn't get it in, so finished with about a 39, which was really disappointing. And it was exactly the same story for me in the lightweight. I think my first throw would have been probably about 82, 83.
Yeah, it was a big mark.
Yeah, and it went out left, which for me usually means a good throw because I've followed through. And I finished on a 79-11, so just off the 40 and the 80, which in a day in Scotland's not a good day for me.
That's your normal.
Yeah, that's not a good day.
That's the low.
That's your your absolute lowest sort of mark that you're looking for. So, but by no means a disaster. I keep saying that because it's easy to foul out.
Yeah.
When you're under pressure like that, it's easy to foul out, and if you do foul out, it's definitely over. So, yeah, 79-11 or something, and 39-8 or something. I think I finished with, but you went over the 2, didn't you? You went over the 80 and the 40.
I remember in the heavy, I think I fouled my first. I did a banker, and I think I was 39 or 38.
Yeah,
I can't remember exactly. I fouled my second, and I think it was weird. It was some weird, like on the left, and I can remember thinking like, what? Like my feet work in the both weights is pretty sound, so kind of took it in the chin. And I remember my third one, I thought, right, hell for leather, and I think I was 41 something, which for me was like,
it's a big throw. Yeah,
I was over the moon. I'm 40 foot's like a good day. Like Sinky's bad day in the heavy's a good day for me, if you know what I mean. It's definitely your event. Mm-hmm. So I was over the moon with that, and I think I was 4th or 5th.
Yeah,
which for me, top half in the weight I was over the moon with it.
Definitely.
And we jumped after that. It was the 28, the lightweight. And again, I think another thing to say that blew our minds is in Scotland, a lot of your implements are like old. They're cast. They're old farm weights. They literally had like this box of handles, chains, and weights, and it was like a Frankenstein.
Pick and mix.
They could pick and mix. You could literally just swap any part out for another bit, and it would just clip in, and you were go. So
pretty cool.
Like the 28, they changed the handle in it. They made sure the chain was the right length, and away we went. And again, all the implements, the hammers and the weights, they were all lead, which to us is like, oh, what's going on here? So it was quite a strange one to adjust to.
Yeah, it's weird. Like the 56 was the size of one of our 28s over here.
Yeah.
So it felt like it changes the dynamics of the throw.
Yeah.
It feels weird. And I do think if you consistently threw with those weights, I'm not saying the people who threw far do, because I don't think they do. But I should probably just say if you caught those weights well, they would fly.
Oh yeah.
When I went in 2015, I threw 85 in the light, which again I don't think I'd have been far off if I hadn't bottled it.
But it's just the pressure, eh? Like
it's just one of those.
I think one of the other things that was like an underlying thing for me, and I don't know if it's like a cultural thing or it's maybe we compete more, is I remember being blown away. Like the open stone was first for us. I must have had about 8 warm-ups. Now that's event number 1, so that's normal for me. By the time we'd gotten into the hammers, I'm doing some swings, I'm winding. But the weights, the heavyweight, I took maybe 2-3 warm-ups and I was like, right, let's go. And I remember standing for about 10-15 minutes watching a lot of the North Americans taking like 10, 15 warm-ups with a heavy weight, and I remember watching thinking, am I doing this wrong?
Yeah.
I couldn't get my head around the sheer volume of warm-ups. Like, I would be in bits. So again, I don't know if there's something wrong with me, or maybe it's just like what you're used to.
Different, just what you're used to. Like we run a whole games, 8 events with about 10 throwers from 1 p.m. till 5 p.m.
Yeah.
So within 4 hours. So we're quite used to kind of fast paced. And games like Braemar, Aboyne, you don't really get warm ups.
No.
There's limited space, limited time. You're on the clock, so we're used to having very few warm ups, I would say. Whereas I don't know, maybe that's different in America. It's not something that
it's certainly something that was unusual. And to quote, like when you're at Braemar and Aboyne, to quote the bear that's been growled, you have to just improvise, adapt, and overcome whatever's in front of you. But my lightweight, I remember I went in, I think I fouled one again. I can't remember if it was my first or my second. No, I didn't actually. I'm talking bollocks. My first one, I put my banker in, I was like high 70s. I think I then went 80 something, and I was like 81 or 82.
Yeah.
Which again, for me, I'm happy with that. I could go away. I think that got me like third or fourth again. So I was just like flying under the radar a wee bit.
Yeah.
I popped my head up with, I think, the weight, the hammers, and then the Braemar, but just sort of flying under the radar. And I can remember next it was the caber. And
you're flying under the radar. I was driving my car.
To segue from that, we went into the caber, and it was a funny bit of wood there, because it was a big crooked caber. It was about as crooked as my beak. And I remember when you
don't know about that.
when you picked it up, it was sort of like the gravity was off centre, and it was that ironwood, so it was quite dense. But I can remember running with it, and I thought, I could toss this, and I just could not get it to go over. So as I'd said, the ruling was if you couldn't get this over and get like a timed score, like at least a quarter to or a quarter past, your toss didn't count. And I constantly got like 85, 90 degrees. It just wouldn't go over, and I just needed it to tip. So I ended up getting my place from the qualifying caber on the Friday night, which I think was 7th or 8th.
Yeah.
And I was just so frustrated with it. Like, again, it was something new for me. I kind of didn't get it going. And the crookedness of the wood, I probably should have tried holding it in several different ways, but it couldn't happen for me.
I think, that was a tough one for you. And given that, like, the Friday night, it was a bit of a shootout as well.
Yeah.
You know, it was a lot of guys tossed that caber. So if you'd placed higher, I mean, we'll talk about your final position, but it could have potentially changed things there for you. Just, you know, with that caber. But what was quite impressive with the caber, Jamie Trask, Warren's son, actually tossed the caber, which was really cool because home games for Jamie. I think he got engaged. Did he get engaged on the field at Fergus, and his fiancée and stuff was there? I don't mean he got engaged this year, but he got engaged at the games, I think. So it was cool for him to toss the caber at the World Championships in front of his home crowd.
I remember actually saying to both Jamie and his dad when we were over, I said, "What age are you, Jamie?" And he said, was it 23 or 24? And I said, "You should get yourself over to Braemar this year, you know, competing under 25s, do a bit of the Open." And he did actually come over this year, and he brought me a present, which I can talk about later, which was just fantastic. But it was good again seeing someone else coming over and having a go at Braemar. And Jamie's a pretty good lad, I think you'd probably agree.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a good guy. First met him in 2015, and he's grown up a lot since then. Turned into a good young thrower. So yeah, great to see him kind of get on that stage and have a go. And I think I remember speaking to. We'll come on to this. I think I remember speaking to Warren and Jamie at the end of the day, and he basically PB'd in almost every event, which is cool as well.
I mean, if you choose someone to do it, it'd be the world.
Exactly, yeah.
And then the last event, which again, it was pretty cool, we had the weight for height, and I remember them erecting the stands.
Yeah.
They got everyone around you in like a 360, and then there was obviously a bit of a barrier.
Yeah.
So you were throwing the weight for height surrounded by people, which obviously in Scotland you have them tend to be on one side or maybe in a semicircle sort of around you. And I remember the setup, like the stands went up, and then I watched the bar go up. In Scotland, the bar a lot of the times is not fixed. It's just a bit of 2x4 wood. It's balanced on 2 pins.
Yeah.
There, it was quite literally like, I'd say it was probably close to 6 inches thick, and it was fixed in place. So I think we started at 14 feet.
Yeah, which like that is quite a high starting height, but it is a World Championships. It's not high for America and Canada, but for us, like, it'd normally be 13, 14, 15.
Yeah.
So straight in at 14. I cleared 14 and then sat at the bar on 15.
You're painfully close, weren't you?
yeah. I played about a bit this year and actually adopted your technique with the
no
with
pull
weight for
special.
height. Yeah, I started pulling it straight from the ground. Well, from the ground to between my legs, no swing really. So sat it on 15, and again going by like where things have been throughout the season, that wasn't horrendous. Like it could have gone worse. So it wasn't too bad. And then you do 16.
So I remember having a bit of a ding dong battle. 14 I went over first time, but I sort of struggled with the bar. We went straight up to 15 and no countbacks, I think, at Worlds, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So 15 I can remember I pulled it, and I can't remember if I went straight over or I hit the bar. I remember it went straight to 16 and I was like, right, I'm kind of where I need to be, but I'd done quick maths and I realised that if I wanted to be in the top half or reaching towards the top 3, which was obviously like, it's always your secret goal, I had to get 16, like it was make or break.
Yeah.
So my first pull, I remember pulling it and I like touched the bottom of the bar. My first pull at 16, I pulled it, I leathered the bar, and because it was fixed, it's the only time in my life I've had to sort of run out of the way the weight, because it came down with so much force. My second pull, I went out in front of it and I was maybe in line with it. And last year, 2022, was my best ever weight for height. I got 16.6, and I think I took a couple of pulls at 16.9. I was close to.
Yeah.
This year, my weight for height was all over the place. I think I did 14.6 a few times. 15 was my regular. 15.6 occasionally. So I knew I was at the top end. And my third pull, I swear to God, I sunk deep and I just heaved it above me, and it went straight over with fresh air. And I was slightly shocked. So I knew at that point I was at least sort of top 4 or 5. And it would depend on other people's standings for the podium. So like that sort of was like a cherry on top of the cake for me. Like that was me, like I've done my bit. 16.6, they didn't go to, they went straight to 17 because of some of the monsters that were there. So
it's interesting for us because like in Scotland, the world record, or SGA world record, Scottish Highland Games Association world record, isn't much over 17 foot, and that's with a knockoff bar, obviously. So we don't see throws higher than 17 foot ever. Whereas it seems like Canada, America, 17 foot, 18 foot, they're
19.
like a regular occurrence. And I've been throwing a long time now, and I can't get my head around it. Like, my dad was good at the weight over the bar, but good was 16 to 16.6. You know, that's good on a knockoff bar. But when you see guys going 17 and 18, like, I don't know, what do you have to do? It's not gym. Like, I'm sure gym can help, but it's a different thing seeing that. And I've seen it a number of times. Like, you know, I've seen it over the years going to Pleasanton and stuff. But it's just impressive when you see someone throwing the weight that high. But yeah, your 16 was good. Lauren also did 16.
Lauren did a comfortable 16.
Yeah, it was impressive because Lauren in Scotland, Lauren would sort of be 15.
Yeah.
15 foot guy. And again, I don't know if it's a different way of pulling due to the fixed bar or what's going on, but I was impressed with Lauren's 16. I was sort of battling. I mean, 15 is my best.
Yeah.
I've done 15 a number of times, but I've never gone higher than 15. So I was sort of battling with big Alex at the 15, and then the top of the pack, or most of the pack were up. No, not most of the pack. I think a lot of guys went out at
15 was the battleground.
Yeah. But
Damien.
John, Glenn, Damien, maybe Vlad.
I think so, yeah.
Went up and had pools at 17.
I just remember watching it sort of through my hands, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I was trying to... I couldn't figure out in my head what the points were. And I actually went and sort of... I think Steve checked when we realised there was a mistake with some of the points.
Yeah.
So I'd been sweating all day about it, and it turned out I actually had a wee bit of breathing room for like a top 3.
Yeah.
So I do remember the presentation was really cool. It was interesting because we did it at the weight for height, like straight after it. And again, they sort of announced everyone. They went through the list, and I just remember I was third, and I think it was half a point or a point. and then there was a bit of a gap between myself and Damien, and then Damien and John had kind of ding-donged back and forth.
Yeah.
But again, you've been thrown all day, you're with like literal giants and men, the best throwers that our sport has to offer.
Yeah.
And then you watch John Van Buren at like 9 feet tall, probably 130 kilograms, start doing backflips, and you just think, there's where I'm going wrong. That's why I can't throw 19 feet. That's what you should have said earlier, I think. That's why you can't throw 18 feet the way the bar, because you can't do a backflip.
Bigger, stronger, faster. Yeah, that's maybe the problem. But no, it was good. It was cool. It was great to be involved in other worlds. I mean, my goal going in, if I'd thrown to sort of best of my ability, I think top 5 would have or could have been achievable. Didn't, and finished 9th. So a wee bit disappointed, but at the same time, given the circumstances, like caber on night 1 and then into 2 fouls with the heavyweight, relatively held it together and finished 9th out of 12. So it was great to see you get podium. I remember I was keeping in touch with my dad throughout the weekend, and he was just sort of saying, get stuck in, don't worry about the caber, don't worry about 2 fouls, just go for it, nothing to lose. And then by the point where he sort of knew how things were looking leading into the final 2 events, I'd sort of said that you were right up there. And I remember him texting me saying, tell Kyle to take it to these guys in their own backyard. And I remember telling you that in the tent, and we were having a bit of a laugh.
I think that's when the beverages had started coming in.
Oh no, I don't think it was a beverage before the final event.
This was, that's probably fair.
Was sort of just before the last 2 events.
I just remember after it there was like the jubilation at all, and I remember Bill Crawford cracked out the trophy and he opened a bottle of whiskey.
I'll tell this story. So he had the World's Trophy, the Webster World's Trophy, and he cracked a bottle of whiskey, and he poured half the bottle into the trophy. And obviously the idea with that is you fill the trophy and it's passed round the athletes. But the first person he gave it to was Kyle. So rather than pass it round, Kyle just chugged the whole half bottle of whiskey literally within about 20 seconds. And then I think it hit you within 10 seconds after that.
It hit me like a train. And I can remember sitting in the corner of the tent, and my nectar the whole weekend had been that it's like a pink lemonade.
Yeah.
And I remember just drinking it. I was like, Kyle, what have you done? And I can remember looking at Bill, and I can remember the thought genuinely went through my head. I was like, you've just drank half this man's bottle of whiskey. You'll never be back at the Worlds. But I can remember I was spinning.
Yeah.
And I remember then, I think Vlad came up to me and was like waterboarding me with a beer.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, Jesus. And then next thing I know, I'm in the beer tent, and I remember sitting. And I can remember there was like some sort of chocolate bar on the bar, and I said to the woman, could I have that, please? And she was like, yeah, there you go.
No inhibitions.
And then I can just remember I was stoating about, and I went to the toilet at one point, and I can remember one of the things that caught me, and again, I was kind of half cut by this point, but the people in attendance, it wasn't like in Scotland there's a lot of tourists, there's locals that like know what's going on in that, but there was people in the crowd who understood what the heavy events were. They understood like what was a good throw, what had went on this weekend, and there was people asking for pictures, asking like for information about what had happened and how my throws were, and it was like people actually like they understood on the ground what was happening.
Yeah, no, they actually follow the heavies and they seem to love it, and I think they'd watched the whole weekend.
Yeah,
like with interest. So it was a great atmosphere. Like there's a big marquee, and they've got lots of live bands like Albanach, the sort of drum band from Scotland, and really good Celtic music playing. So we probably stayed there for a good 3-4 hours.
I couldn't tell you how long it was, if I'm being honest.
We stayed a good while after the games and had beers with everybody. You had to buy little tokens and take them up to the bar and get your beers, but it was a good time. Definitely a good time.
I can remember we went back, we gathered our stuff. We then we got in was it Jason or Lawrence Mortar we jumped in?
Jason took us to the off licence.
We immediately put the Scottish music on the way home, and there was like this surreal moment where Sinclair and I were merry, and we were having all these like heart to hearts that you'd never say to each other sober. And he was saying like, God, you've got such beautiful eyes, and no, but we're just sitting, we're in the car, and we're like, oh, we've both done well, like good to be here. Jason had the tunes on, obviously he's pretty sober.
Yeah.
And we must have just been slavering shite in the back of this massive pickup that felt like a limousine. And we ended up going to the off license. And I remember going in and I was like, no vodka I recognised. And I said to this like random Canadian dude who, I don't know what age he was, probably like 25. I was like, what's a good vodka in that? And he picked one out. And I've no idea what came over me because I'm a tight Scotsman. But when I was at the bar, I just bought him like his case of beer.
Oh, right.
And I can remember as soon as I walked out, I had my vodka and like my Pepsi, and I was like, what are you doing, Kyle? Eh? Why are you buying somebody's drink? But the guy was like, thanks, brother, I appreciate that. And then I remember we went back to the hotel and we were like, right, chicken, food, let's go.
Yeah, first thing.
It was myself, Jason, and I think you were dotting about at the back. So we parked, we used the facilities.
We did.
And then we headed over to where the burrito was. I think our intention was burrito.
Burritos,
But I can remember for some reason it was shut. And Jason and I were like, oh, was it Popeyes?
Popeyes chicken, yeah.
And I can remember you're like, oh, I'm going into the pub here, I'm going in. So Sinclair went into the pub and we just sort of like, oh, we'll bring food. So we went along and I remember spending like $80 to $100 on Popeyes. And again, nothing I've ever had. And Jason was the guide in hand. He was leading me astray here. He was like, get this, get that. So I can't lie to you, Sinclair. Jason and I did eat a burger before we got back to you. We thought, he's in there enjoying himself.
Well, I did think, so it must have been half an hour. And
easily.
It was a jolly time for me, though, because in the time you spent $80 on chicken, I think I'd spent $80 on rum.
Well, you say you'd spent $80, but it wasn't your own money because Jason and I walked into the bar. Sinclair was... one of the first things I saw was him walking up to a table of young men. Now, Sinclair has quite an extensive rugby background. He walked up to these Canadian lads, they were just having a pint. Again, very pleasant, as pretty much everyone in the country was. And Sinclair walked up and I'll try and do an impression. He went, do you play rugby? And the guy went, yes, sir. And Sinclair went, you a tight head? And the guy went, yes, sir. And he went, I thought so. And that was the extent of the conversation. Sinclair then walked off and bounded across the room, merry as you like. So Jason and I were sort of sitting at the bar. I was having my burger, a bit of chicken, and I was just eating away. And the woman was like, oh, are you with that guy? We were like, yeah, he's with us. He was like, oh, he's not paid for his drinks yet. And I was sort of like, oh, I think he's still having a few. He was like, oh, he's just... So me and Jason ended up paying the tab. At this point, Sinclair went outside to speak to somebody. And did you not meet somebody for like Scotland?
Yeah.
Like randomly?
I met a guy that had emigrated when he was like 14 or something with his family.
Yeah.
But he turned out to be from near Inverness. So we were having a chat about home outside what felt like a very Scottish pub.
Aye, it was a weird one, eh? It was like a modern building. The interior was like this sort of... almost like it was like a gritty Scottish like wee town sort of feel.
It was good.
And then I remember going back to the room. I can remember smashing like another burger and then like some wings. And then I remember going along to the what was it the suite was called?
Jason
Heritage
Suite.
had the Heritage Suite. It was like an upgraded suite. So we went back there. I spent my night eating chicken, and then Sinclair was trying to peer pressure me into consuming more alcohol. But I remembered that
you retired early.
We had an early day the next day, and I thought I will call it a night. Sinclair was not far behind me, but he had been consuming quite a lot of rum as had been laid out. The next day we got up and we did the usual. Let's go to the mall. We'll get some presents for family and friends. So we got to the mall. Sinclair didn't eat much of his breakfast. I got some of that, so that was an event win on that day. And I can remember you melted into the massage chair, didn't you?
Yeah, they were good. They had like you see in airports. They had these like $2 massage chairs and they weren't private. They were like right in the middle of the walkway,
like the alley, right?
In this mall.
Like a busy mall. So Sinclair sat there and I was like, I'm going to go to this shop, you fancy coming? And you sort of said, you were like, no, I'm okay, I'll just sit here. And he was sitting with like his $1 coins, popping them in the chair, just sitting there vibrating away, enjoying himself. So I went away. I remember buying some candles. I bought some Crocs. I think I bought like my wife's expecting, so I bought like a wee snowsuit. I was away for about an hour. I came by you. I was like, "You all right in that?" You didn't even respond to me. I can remember laughing because I put a coin in and walked away. I think I went into like a beauty place and got like my wife some moisturiser or whatever. I was away again. I brought a drink. I came back and you were sitting there with a hat down, and I was like, "Sinky, you all right?" You didn't even respond to me. You were just sleeping. I went away again. I came back and then I was like, "You want to go get food?" And you said, "Yeah." And we went along to the food court. And I can remember I was braving Taco Bell and you ordered like a hot dog and nachos and you barely touched them.
Yeah, I wasn't in a great place. That Canadian rum.
Yeah.
It Oh, no, look, it was a great time. It was one of the best trips I've been on, to be fair. I think going with a good friend, someone you know well, it changes the trip. You know, I've done a lot of trips on my own.
Yeah.
And again, they're great. You know, it's good to get away, but it's always good going as part of a group
You can
as well.
you can have a bit of relaxation, a bit of chat.
Yeah.
It's a slice of home and comfort, you know.
Absolutely. So speaking of massage chairs, not so much a massage chair, but in the airport on the way home, we kind of lost each other.
Yeah.
For a good hour, and I phoned Kyle. I was like, "Where are you?" I was like, "Oh, gate 15." I was like, "Next to the massage place," and he was like, "What massage place?" So I was like, "You've got to come here, come here, come here." So basically, we found a little massage place, not seedy.
No, it wasn't like a. Yeah, it wasn't one of those.
No,
It was
no.
like you're out in the open. There's people walking by you, and they had those things that you kneel / sit / lie on.
Yeah, so I suppose it was essentially a massage chair.
Yeah, and I saw Sinclair in it, and I thought I'm going to get a slice for that. So I got in it, and I was getting hammered away, and I was like, I'm going to be magic in
It
this
was
flight.
really good.
And I ended up. Did I not get? I forget
got
the
a
word.
pedicure.
A pedicure. Yeah, I got a pedicure. I thought, yeah, let's go. And I felt sorry for this woman because it looked like she was like cutting iron. It was like. I could hear
Parmesan.
it. Yeah, Parmesan. But I ended up getting that done, and I went on this plane feeling like magic. But we'd ended up at the till when we were booking our flight, and we sort of went for the cheeky approach, you know. And we were like, "Oh, is it a possibility to upgrade?" And luckily, on our passports, we still had like the business class, like first class stamp.
From the way out.
So
yeah.
the woman sort of looked, and I just remember she was like, "Oh, unfortunately, it's fully booked, but I can give you the extra leg room premium or whatever." And
Yeah.
I just remember Sinclair like sort of going, "Yes, that'll do," and like the big Tory he is. And they ended up, we ended up in this like area, and I can remember we got on the plane, and we were in this extra leg room, and she put up like this tape, and we had like this area like we were some biological hazard or some children in like a gated off area.
All to ourselves.
So we're just sitting there ourselves, and then we had the flight home. We had a quite a good sleep, and the food wasn't bad. And next thing you know, we were back in Scotland, just recapping and having a good laugh at everything. It was honestly, it was my first Worlds abroad, like other than going to the amateur one, and genuinely, you made it more fun and more enjoyable for what it was.
Yeah, it was a great trip. I think it was great to see you get podium. Like I said, it's kind of a result. You've had a good few seasons. On a whole, I was a little bit disappointed, but again, like you go to these places, you're thrown against the best in the world,
Yeah.
so it's a different ball game. But yeah, great trip. Thanks again to Warren, Christoph, Bill, and Steve. Just everyone involved with Webster Worlds. It was a great experience again.
Yeah, I again, my first experience I was meant to go before, but was sadly cancelled, and I think it's pretty well run. Most of the best rows you could have there were there.
Yeah.
It was a good ding dong battle, and it was again. I threw pretty well. I was over the moon with it, but it was well run. You were looked after, and it was like harsh but fair judging, which is always how I would choose it to be. So again, I'd love to go back to Fergus on a normal sort of year. See
Same.
the lay of the land.
We talked a lot with like Lauren and Jason about
Yeah.
going over for a fun trip as well.
Yeah.
So we'll hopefully manage to do that maybe next year. No, you'll have a baby.
Yeah, hopefully have a wee one sitting here, and then that'll probably complicate things, I've no doubt. And
But yeah, hopefully we'll get another trip together. If anyone wants to invite us to their games, we're more than happy to come, Kyle.
yeah, and then we can briefly mention you on the podcast and blow a little bit of smoke if that works. But again, this has been episode 2. Thank you to you folks for listening to us waffle on about our adventures us here and our shenanigans. Probably pretty timid compared to what it would have been years ago, I imagine.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, it's episode 2, and hopefully we're going to keep rolling these out. So thanks for listening again.
Cheers, folks. Catch you soon.